I formed the Common Sense Party just before COVID hit, and the purpose was to give the rest of us a chance. That politics in California is dominated by the Democratic Party. They have every statewide office and 2/3 of the Assembly and 2/3 of the state Senate. And the Republican Party has largely become irrelevant. So it's a party for the rest of us. It's a party for people who want to contribute, who have something to contribute in an idea or even running for office. The key element is if you are independent of the party structures, if you think for yourself, if you make your decisions based on facts, then you are a common sense party candidate.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we're glad to be joined by Tom Campbell, former congressman, assemblyman, state senator, talk a little bit about his new venture in the Common Sense Party. Tom, how's it going? And thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's going just great. I hope it is with you in Sacramento. Are you about 100 degrees or something?
Yeah, we're a little below that. It's been we have a cooling trend. Hopefully it continues. I was just kind of thinking about that, about how it's been kind of cooler this summer. I wondered if it had to do with something with all the rain we've had. So
yeah, probably so. Well, thank God for that. And the drought is over. So let's hope that the wildfires are tamped down as well. We've got to worry about nature, don't we?
No, yeah, definitely. Even as even in Maui, they have these problems. So
isn't that tragic? Oh my gosh, have you seen the photos of Lahaina?
Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, such a beautiful little town.
Definitely. But kind of, talk a little bit about you for our listeners who don't know a lot about you, Tom. Can you give us a little background on how you kind of got into politics and what you're doing today?
Sure. I got into politics when I was a professor at Stanford, and I ran for Congress and was elected in 1988. I was reelected in 92. I ran for Senate I was reelected in 90, ran for Senate in 92. I lost in the Republican primary. I went back to Stanford, became a California state senator because our state senator resigned for 2 years. 2 years later, the congressman next door resigned, and I ran for Congress and went back to Congress. So I went to Congress, then the state Senate, then Congress again. I ran for Senate again in 2000, but did not make it. I became the dean of the business school at Berkeley, and then the dean of the of the law school at Chapman. I finished that position about 7 years ago. And now I've been a professor of economics and a professor of law at Chapman.
At Stanford, you were a law professor, right? Is that where you started out?
Yeah, that's right.
What subjects did you teach?
Antitrust, economics for lawyers, international trade, international jurisdiction, and a course I put together on the subjects that I was dealing with in Congress that touched on separation of powers. So it was a constitutional law seminar that I taught on Sunday mornings.
Oh, interesting. Kind of, what was it like, going from Congress to kind of state politics? Kind of, what were some of the differences you noticed?
Oh, gosh, almost all the differences are in favor of state politics. So in the state Senate, there's only 40 senators. That means if you've got 20 people who can agree with you, you've got your bill passed. Every bill you introduce has a hearing and a vote. If you get past the hearing, at least a vote in the committee. In Congress, you can introduce an infinity number of bills and not have a hearing or a vote on any of them. And that's the fate for most of us in Congress. Right. Out of 435, there's probably 8 people who really run things. So what you try to do in the House of Representatives is choose a niche, an area where you've got some focus and expertise. And in my case, that was war powers. President Clinton was bombing Yugoslavia without the approval of Congress. Mm-hmm. And since then, that's become important in other contexts, too, with President Trump bombing in Syria, President Obama bombing in Libya, all without the approval of Congress. So I made that my field. And given that I had taught and was still a professor of law then, and taught a separation of powers seminar, right. It was a good fit. By contrast, in the state Senate, the entire state, which is the 5th largest economy in the world, is relevant. And in those days, you still needed 2/3 vote to pass the budget. So the Democratic majority was below 2/3, and hence I, as a Republican, was necessary to pass the budget, and I think as a result, I got more attention, far more than I ever did in the Congress. But I formed the Common Sense Party just before COVID hit in 2019. And the purpose was to give the rest of us a chance that politics in California is dominated by one party. It's the monopoly party, the Democratic Party. They have every statewide office and 2/3 of the Assembly and 2/3 of the state Senate. And the Republican Party has largely become irrelevant. I think that's their own doing. They embraced President Trump. I resigned from the Republican Party after the nomination of President Trump back in 2016. So it's a party for the rest of us. It's a party for people who want to contribute, who have something to contribute in an idea or even running for office, but they are at a tremendous disadvantage under California law if they're not with a party. The parties are favored under California law. So the key element is if you are independent of the party structures, if you think for yourself, if you make your decisions based on facts, then you are a common sense party candidate.
It's kind of amazing the deterioration of the Republican Party in California. If you think back maybe 25 years ago, not that long ago in a lot of our minds, you had a Republican governor. You had a Republican state senator not too long ago. You had a Republican control of the assembly for a little bit, or the assembly was pretty close. And you yourself, represented an area that was considered Republican. Kind of, what has led to the deterioration of the Republican Party here over the last 25 years, where it's not even a player anymore?
It's the identification that the National Party made with the far right on social issues that really started it. And it's difficult to separate the public's perception of the California Republican Party from the National Republican Party. And indeed, when I was still in office, I spent a fair amount of time whenever I met a new person who said, "Oh, you're a Republican," telling them I'm a Republican, but I happen to be pro-choice. I'm a Republican, but I don't believe in deficit spending and running up the deficit the way that Republican and Democratic presidents did. But the National Party dominates in the perception. So if you are running in a state of California and your views on the social issues are not in the center, not moderate, but let's say 100% on the right, you're not going to get elected. Nevertheless, the California Republican Party made that choice, moved to the right on the social issues, and essentially squeezed out the moderate wing of the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like if you look at the demographic of registered voters now, there's about, under 30% Republicans, under 50% Democrat, and there's just kind of this big kind of gray area of decline to state, or I'd like to say, former Republicans. Kind of what is kind of the story of the California electorate, and kind of where is room for a third party?
Well, first of all, we can go back to the PPIC poll, 2016, I think. Let me just double check. I think it was 2018, I'm sorry. And the PPIC, Public Policy Institute of California, asked Californians, do you think there's a need for a third party? And 55% of all they surveyed said there's a need for a new party. Interestingly, 56% of Democrats said so. So it isn't just former Republicans, Jarrett, although you're quite right to say that there's a lot that left the Republican Party. 53% of Republicans think we need a new party. And as you might guess, 75% of those who are independent think we need a third party. So the sentiment is strong. The reason is that the two major parties have each insisted on orthodoxy. So if you want the nomination of the support of the Democratic Party, we have open primaries now, or top two primaries, but the Democratic Party will support one Democrat, even if there's more than one in the race.
Right.
And the Republican Party will support one Republican, even if there's many Republicans in the race. And if you don't have the support of that party, you're not going to make it through. You're not going to make it to the top two, and you're not going to make it in November. So increased orthodoxy is the reason. Virtually any issue that you might put forward, there's a reasonable common sense approach, but the two parties have chosen an extreme approach. Schooling is a good one. It's just tragic. It's a real embarrassment and sadness that our public school system is not providing training for our children to take the jobs that are available in the modern economy. With all that we spend on schools, we are rated so very much towards the bottom. Now, the Democratic Party will never support school choice, whether that's charter schools or voucher schools, because of the strength of the California Teachers Association union. If you don't get the support of the California Teachers Association, the CTA union, you're not going to get the support of the Democratic Party. And on the Republican side, the difficulty is I favor, for example, increasing salary for teachers, particularly those in tougher schools. Well, the Republicans don't favor that, at least the regular party doesn't, because so much of the pay that a salary that goes to teachers goes to the union dues, which is then used by the CTA union for Democrats. So what's the right answer? Something in the middle, where parents get to choose the school where their child goes, provided there's opportunity for and space available. And we pay more for teachers in the more difficult schools. Democrats won't like that. Republicans, official Democrats won't. Official Republicans won't. But I think the rest of us will.
Yeah, and that's kind of, how things used to be done, right? Is there'd be compromise between the parties and a common sense approach would kind of unfold. But kind of lately, as you've noted, is we've gotten, more extreme members from both sides kind of elected up here in Sacramento. And a lot of people attribute it to this kind of new system we have here, the top two, where I think the intent of the top two was to kind of bring more moderate folks to Sacramento, but it's kind of had the opposite effect because of kind of the party system you've just kind of identified. Can you kind of touch upon that?
Sure. I think that top two did not bring about the polarization, but top two instead has shifted the focus on where polarization takes place. So before top two, you'd have a Democrat and a Republican, Libertarian, Green, Peace and Freedom, American Independent Party. All of the parties would send a nominee to the finals in November, and the Democrat would win most of the time. Occasional districts, in a few districts, Republicans would win, but the third party never would. As the Democratic Party became more and more polarized to the extent that it's following the marching orders of the public employee unions, and the Republican Party became more and more polarized as it's marching to the direction of the social right, those two parties presented less of a middle ground. So top two was the idea to try to energize the middle. What happened is that two Democrats went on to the finals, or two Republicans went on to the finals in those districts where the plan was to have a contest between the two parties. And the rest of the districts tended to be safe Democrat or safe Republican. So I don't think it was top two that did it. I think top two instead began the focus now within the Democratic Party. There's a pro-business wing and a socially leftist wing. And so you get the final top two. They're both Democrats instead of a Democrat versus a Republican. The result is actually beneficial because you've got everybody now, Democrat, Republican, Independent, declined to state, Common Sense Party, everybody voting in November. Even if the choice is between the centrist Democrat and the more left-wing Democrat, everybody participates. Whereas before top two, that debate in the Democratic Party was entirely between Democrats and independents, if the Democrats, whom the Democrats allowed to vote. It didn't empower the Republicans or members of the Green Party or members of the Libertarian Party. So the focus has moved to the November election where everybody gets to vote. And the focus has moved to a fight within the Democratic Party as the Republican Party becomes more and more irrelevant. That's where the top two has had a beneficial impact. there is actually a contest between two candidates who are not identical, and everybody gets to participate in the vote.
Yeah, kind of, undertaking of creating a third party. Can you kind of talk to that and kind of how do you
Sure.
become a recognized, party officially on the ballot here in California?
The law is that 0.3% of the registered voters in the state have to choose to identify with your party. And so the numbers work out to about 73,000 out of about 22 million registered voters. So that's not a terribly high number. And if those 73,000 register in your party, then the party becomes official. The result of the party becoming official is significant for campaign finance purposes. Then you can get the benefit of a 9-to-1 advantage in how much money a candidate can raise. Without the party, you cannot raise more than $4,500 from an individual if you're running for assembly or state senate. With a party, you can raise 45,000 additional, so becomes 49,500. So it's a 9-to-1 advantage if you have a party. So once we get 73,000, we will then be in a position to say to candidates, and we can say to Democrats, indeed I've said this publicly, Democrats or Republicans or Libertarians or Peace and Freedom, any party, if you are independent in your thinking, if you make decisions on the basis of facts, if you don't just follow lockstep what the party chieftains tell you, well, then we're available to help you because you won't get help from your party. You won't get help from the regular Democrats or the regular Republicans. But we will. And if you have a donor who can give $45,000 to your campaign, you can't get that money. A Democrat can, a Republican can, who's marching in lockstep, but you can't.
Right.
But with the Common Sense Party, you could.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the interesting point. And you'll hear a lot of people say that, yeah, you might have a moderate Democrat name, but do they actually, when it comes down to it, vote moderately? And as you know, leadership in politics and kind of your committee assignments and things like that, whether the speaker is going to help you out the next term, kind of comes into play on their votes over there. So, sometimes they might not vote how they want to vote or vote their district, but they're kind of forced to. Can you talk about that kind of in your political career, kind of experience of dealing with leadership and I guess bucking them and kind of the fear you might face in not going along with the system?
It's real. It's real. The party control does influence votes in the legislature and in Congress. I saw it in both places. And I saw, this is a tragedy, but I saw people who knew better and off the record would tell you that they wished they could have voted the other way, but that they were unable to because of their realization that party leadership wanted a particular vote. I'm sorry that that's happened. It continues to happen. So that's going to be the case where the 9-to-1 financial advantage comes with going along with the party. Unless you're independently wealthy, Jared, how are you going to maintain your office or run for office if your opponent's got 9 times more opportunity to raise money than you do? So what I was hoping to do was, and we will with the Common Sense Party, is to equalize that 9-to-1 advantage so that you do vote your conscience. And if your party, let's say you're a business-oriented or a free market-oriented Democrat, or you're a socially moderate Republican, and your party doesn't like you for that, in either case, you could nevertheless vote your conscience. And when the party freezes you out of fundraising, you could come to the Common Sense Party, and without even changing your party, you could get the donations that the Democratic or the Republican label would otherwise have given you a chance to do. Now, the other system is if we were to have more courageous, independent people who buck the system, even within it, and form their own fulcrum. I don't know if you remember the Gang of Four, and then the Gang of Five.
Right.
Steve Peace, I think, was part of it. Ron Calderon was part of it. Members of the Assembly who threatened Willie Brown. And they had enough to deny him the vote that he needed on fundamental passage then they were a force. Maybe you could call it the Joe Manchin of that time, right?
Right.
The position Joe Manchin holds within the Democratic Party. So to get that fulcrum, there 6 Democrats in the state Senate would have to be of this nature because the Democrats are 6 above 2/3. So that's, I think, another route to it where you can have a fulcrum who say, no, we're not going along unless you become more centrist, more moderate. And
Right.
without 2/3, then the Democrats can't, or the majority party happens to be the Democrats, can't put a ballot initiative to amend the Constitution on the ballot without raising a single dollar.
Yeah, well, as the Gang of Four would tell you, is that they could count to 41, and back then, you could get 41 votes from Republicans or Democrats. Kind of mattered where you put, and kind of one of them went to Congress and formed the Blue Dogs and kind of created a similar effect there, kind of helping balance the budget there. But
That's
kind of
right.
here, as you're pointing out, is it's too galvanized. It's too one party dominated, and with party politics, it's hard to stand your ground on some of your issues. Kind of where this third party makes sense. What's the advantage of, for example, creating this third party instead of something like a political action committee?
The Political Action Committee will not be able to run its own candidate. It has to choose among the candidates. So the Political Action Committee comes along and chooses a candidate, and it's no guarantee that that candidate will get their support the next time. It's not long-term commitment, whereas a party gives a candidate who's loyal a long-term commitment. Now, by contrast, you have a third party able to empower you to get the 9-to-1 advantage, and you go to your donors in your district. You don't have to wait for the whim of a political action committee to support you and hope they do next time too. You go to your base. You go to the same people who got you into office. And if you've got a couple, let's say, who are financially capable of contributing, right now, if you're bucking the party, you're not going to get more than $4,500, or if it's a couple, $9,000. But if they come to the Common Sense Party and we support you, well, you could get $100,000.
Yeah. It's interesting. We have an interesting election here coming up with the state Senate. We're all anticipating Dianne Feinstein's going to not run again, and then a new state senator will be enshrined. And you've run for state Senate a couple times, and it was feasible or not out of the area of comprehension that a Republican could challenge and actually win a state Senate seat. Now that doesn't even seem fathomable. But here we had Willie Brown kind of announce that he thinks that Arnold Schwarzenegger might run for state Senate. Kind of, you've said before that for a Republican to win, it's going to take a Schwarzenegger type person. And it's the kind of question is Arnold even a Republican, or is he kind of more aligned with something like common sense? And kind of is this kind of the beginning of what you're seeing is kind of a shift in the parties and the need for an independent or someone kind of out of the abnormal areas to kind of come and kind of take over.
I had the honor to serve as finance director. I was head of the Department of Finance under Governor Schwarzenegger, so I have high regard for him, wish him well. And I asked him if he could join the Common Sense Party, and he said he's going to stay a Republican. It's interesting because he doesn't need to have any party.
Right.
His name ID was 100, now it's 101 or something. So he could have run without even being a Republican, but he's chosen to stay a Republican. And given that, he can run for United States Senate, and he'll probably make the top 2. So the Democrats have 3 candidates: Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, and Barbara Lee, all Congress members. And one of them will make the finals, and Arnold Schwarzenegger will make the finals. So I'd urge him to do it. I think he'd have a great chance of winning. I also have urged Andrew Yang to run. His name ID is not as great as Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's pretty good. You might remember he ran for president on the Democratic side, and he's now co-chairman of a new party called Forward. We have formed an alliance with Forward. We're separate, but we formed a strategic alliance with Forward. And I'd be delighted to see him run. That'd give people a real choice come November, instead of what we will have, 2 Democrats of the 3 that I mentioned, with very small differences between their positions, and at least in my perception, with one exception I want to make in favor of Barbara Lee. but following the orthodoxy, following what the party tells you to do. So I don't think that's best for California. The one exception I want to make for Barbara Lee is she showed exceptional courage to vote against the authorization of the use for military force in Iraq because it was too open-ended. It had no termination date, and it was too broad. Indeed, it's being used even today, and it was used by President Obama and President Trump, the resolution back in from 2001. So she bucked her party on that, and I give her credit for it.
No, yeah, definitely. You kind of mentioned that you were finance director for Governor Schwarzenegger, in 2005 to 2006. So that was right before we had the big recession. Kind of looking at today's budget and the kind of the issues we're facing with the deficit, but I bet our budget's maybe like 10 times bigger than the one you oversaw. Can you kind of talk to us about the state of the California budget from what you learned and as an economist, and kind of what do you think the next 3-year outlook on our budget is and kind of where we're headed?
It's twice as big, yet a little bit more than twice as big. So you're right; things have grown. Revenue drops when the stock market goes down. Revenue grows when the stock market goes up. So our revenue dropped because of the decline in the stock market as we hit inflation, and the recovery of the stock market will help recovery of the finances of California. Because of the huge dependence on the stock market, we have a need for a bigger reserve than we presently have. So that would be my recommendation. When we had a boom of money just last year, a windfall of money because the stock market was shooting up as COVID was ending, we put that money into the rainy day fund to the maximum extent that we could, but under our present law, you had to refund the rest. And Governor Newsom was running for office, and he refunded it to particular constituencies that, in my opinion, favored his reelection. I was concerned about his doing so. You might remember you got a rebate for owning a car, whether the gas tax hit you or not. If you were an electric vehicle, you still got the rebate. So instead, what we should do is, in the years when we have that unusually high revenue, we ought to expand our ability to put the money into the rainy day fund. Now, that's the fundamental structural change. It needs to be done. That needs to be done by constitutional amendment, and because the present system is in the Constitution. Secondly, we need to get a control over how we spend money. We shouldn't just take as given what we spent last year and then just plus it up by the inflation rate. No, zero-based budgeting makes tremendously good sense. That's to say, bring every account down to zero and say, what's the argument for it to go to this level or that level, as opposed to always starting with what you spent last year, which locks in a huge degree of expenditure. I'm very troubled as well at the diversion of money that was intended by the voters for infrastructure, like building water reserves, reservoirs, expanding the capacity of dams, expanding the delivery systems in the Central Valley, that was not spent as the voters intended it to be in 2010. So you have a lot of diversion of money that should be going to long-term infrastructure to short-term goals instead. So those are the steps that I would take if I had the chance to influence the budget.
Yeah. Coming into an election year, people are always, kind of trying to press upon what the major issues are. I guess to you and the common sense party, what are the major issues facing voters today? And how would you solve them?
I wanted to speak first for myself and then talk about the party. So crime, security, people have the right to be safe in their homes, and they're not. We have home invasion robberies. We have older people who are very concerned about being pushed down on the street in our major cities. Crime is number one in people's focus, and well, it should be. The answer is clear: prosecute criminals. Do not say you get a free ride if you only stole $999. Hire the police, honor the police, hire prosecutors, have prosecutors actually bring cases and put people in jail when they break the law. That is a model we have departed from. As you know, in most cities, we've got a policy of if you rob a convenience store or rob a CVS or Walgreens, and it's under 1,000, we're not going to prosecute you. Well, heck, that just invites more. Second to homelessness. Homelessness is the ugly realization. Ugly for everybody, ugly for the homeless person, ugly for the rest of us. Of the absence of adequate housing. Many people jump to say, okay, let's talk about the root causes. Yes, I understand, and I'm all for addressing the root causes. But for heaven's sakes, take people off the street. It's not compassionate to let somebody sit on the street in unsanitary conditions. Bring them to triage centers. Provide them with the minimum, the basics of housing and access to drug dependency care. And the federal courts have allowed that to happen. So long as there is a place, you can take somebody off the street who doesn't want to go off the street. But none of the major cities in California will do that. The left here is responsible for keeping the system whereby people who are on the street are allowed to stay on the street. And then the longer term expansion of home building, that requires a significant change in our regulatory burden, so that if you want to build a house or a home, you've got to pay so much in terms of registrations, in terms of set-asides, in terms of local government demands, in terms of permits, that it's no longer affordable by the time you finish it. So a major reform in the regulatory system is essential as well. So that's answering for me. The Common Sense Party focuses on structural reform in elections. So eliminate that 9-to-1 advantage. You shouldn't be able to raise more money for running for office just because you are following the orthodoxy of the Democratic or the Republican Party. 2, rank choice voting or some similar approach. We already have top 2 in California, so that was an improvement. 3, initiatives should be phrased by a neutral. Right now, the summary of what an initiative stands for is written by the Attorney General, who is a partisan office holder. And I know of instances where the Attorney General has essentially shut down an initiative by threatening to give an unfavorable description of it. Trailer bills, number 4, trailer bills. So the Constitution requires that the bills go through both houses and that they have a certain number of days in each house, and that the bills be available for public comment and observation at least 3 days before they're voted on. All of that goes out the window at budget time, which is the time we're about to get into. Right. Now you see miraculously bills that come through the legislature which have nothing in them except the bill number. And but it did go through the Assembly. It did go through the state Senate. It's now in conference. And then the governor and the Democratic leadership puts into the bill the content they want. Nobody has seen it. Nobody can study it until the very last minute. So those are structural reforms that the Common Sense Party has been involved in promoting.
You know, it's interesting. You served in kind of an area where tech is prominent, and a lot of the folks in the tech community kind of support a lot of these claims. And kind of what is their interest in a lot of the California wealthy tech elites kind of investing in something like this third party and some of the things you just talked about?
I think what characterizes the people of Silicon Valley, whom it was my honor to represent for many years, is they prize intellect, they prize independence, they prize people who work hard and think for themselves. Why not in politics? Why not independent? Think for yourself, work hard, as opposed to I'm entitled to this job in the state Senate because I was in the state assembly. I'm entitled to the assembly job because I was on the board of supervisors. I'm entitled to the supervisor job because I was on the city council. And in each time, I've done my service for the party, and so I'm promoted to the next step. So I think it's tailor-made. The independent movement, whether it's the Common Sense Party, the Forward Party, or to a large extent, No Labels, they're also very supported in Silicon Valley. The reality kicks in where you look at the legislature and you don't see any independents. The last one was Chad Mays, and he voluntarily retired 2 years ago. And so Silicon Valley has to temper its instinctive support for the independent-minded person with the reality that there's one-party rule. I want to give an alternative. So once we have a viable alternative where somebody can run without signing up for the full orthodoxy of the dominant party or the Democratic or Republican, I think Silicon Valley will be enthusiastically supportive.
As an economist and someone who's worked in the Department of Finance and has kind of probably heard about this issue for a long time, everyone complains about taxes in California and how we pay so much, and people feel we don't maybe get our fair share in parts of services and things like that. Kind of, what's your view on the tax base in California, and does it need to change or be addressed at all?
Yeah, yes, it does. And a very good model was the Parsky Commission, which proposed a fundamental change in the tax system in California. And I'm trying to recall, I think they issued their report around 2010 or 2009. So I'd recommend any of your followers to take a look. Just Google Parsky Commission and for California. Here are the basics. We are too dependent on capital gains taxation. So stock market goes up, we make a bundle. Stock market goes down, we lose a bundle. That's why we flip so much just between this year and last. So smooth it out. One way of doing that would be to emulate the federal tax. I would suggest the following. It's not perfect, but it's a dang sight better than our present. Suppose we say, when you're done filling out your federal income tax return, you apply a certain percentage and you send that to the California Internal Franchise Tax Board, and that's it. You don't have to fill out a separate California return. I think people would love that. It would save them all the time they spend on their California return. I can't fix the federal return, at least not from my position as a professor, but that would be another reform. A value-added tax is what Europe does. It is a way of collecting a sales tax, but it collects it at every step of the production chain. That has a lot of benefit. It's consumption-based, so that it doesn't have a deleterious effect on investment. If you tax capital gains at the maximum, which we do in California, we don't have any preference, then you have less investment in California. So moving towards a broad-based consumption tax and the nature of the Parsky Commission recommended would be wise as well. But let me return to the point I made a few moments ago. Go back to what we're spending. Do we have a tax problem or do we have a spending problem? Does any Californian believe that we are efficient in our state spending? We all know the scandal about the money that was sent out over COVID and the EDD money. Money going to prisoners, money going to people who were not legally permitted to have that, and that's simply atypical. It's not exaggerate. It's not an exaggerated example. Yeah. So go back to zero-based budgeting and see if you cannot find a 10% or at least a 5% savings in each department. This is my old Department of Finance hat now here. I'm looking at every other department, but I'd be willing to do it to the Department of Finance as well. Can't you find me 5% that we spend less? And if you can't, I think I might vote for somebody who can.
Right. That's kind of, what you're talking about is accountability in government, and kind of how do you have accountability in government? How do you have accountability in your own party?
We have accountability because the voters will have the opportunity to vote for you, and you don't when you're running the first time on the basis of what you believe, and then after you've been elected on the basis of what you've done. So the huge expansion in social media and available information through the internet, that's all since I started in politics, Jared. I started in 1988, so that was before we had any of those. And in those days, people didn't have the means to find out about somebody's voting record or their positions. Now that's completely easy. It's a couple of clicks. Right. So everybody can hold everybody's in account. And it's absolutely simple to set up a website that scores people. So it used to be, I'm sure you remember, maybe you don't, you're a little younger, the scorecards that various organizations put out. The gun advocates and the gun control people both put out scorecards. The Democrats and the Republicans set up these commissions committees which had neutral sounding names. The Committee to Save the Budget, or
Right.
the Committee to Protect Seniors, and they were really fronts for the two parties. And those two parties then rated. Oh, what a surprise! The Democrat gets 100% from the Committee to Save Seniors. Republican gets 0. So we don't have to rely on those anymore. We've got a lot of neutral scorecard keepers, like the National Taxpayers Union, for example, or Common Cause, or League of Women Voters. So that's how accountability is now much more possible than it was before.
So you said earlier that you needed 73,000 registered voters to become a recognized party. Do you know kind of where you're at right now in terms of getting the requisite number of registered voters?
Yeah, we're a little less than half, and I would prefer us to be almost at 73,000. So what we're doing is a big focus on college campuses. With the students returning to college campuses now, we have 280,000 students in UCs. We have over 400,000 in the CSU system, students coming back. We have over 2 million in the California community colleges, all coming back this month and next. So what we're doing is sending out volunteers to the registration days. Each of these colleges, public universities or colleges, has a registration event. And we will be part of that with volunteers. So we're lucky to have a good volunteer base. The Forward Party has been a great part of our partnership in helping us with the volunteer base. And we'll get to those college campuses and register the students as they're coming back. And Jared, one other aspect. It's not impossible at all. We've registered a substantial number of people who are moving from the Democratic Party or moving from the Republican Party. But if you're asking somebody who's registering to vote for the first time to choose the Common Sense Party, it's right there on the registration form. You just check the box Other and write in Common Sense Party. We're not asking them to change their party. It's an easier request.
Right.
So I'm optimistic that our college push will make the difference.
Interesting. I guess for those our listeners who kind of want to find out more information, kind of look in to see whether they want to register or not, how can they kind of look into the Common Sense Party and figure out how to change their registration?
cacommonsense.org. And once you go to that page, there's a button you push to go to register to vote. It says, how can I participate? We link the voter to the Secretary of State's website, and it takes under 5 minutes to register or re-register to vote. You just access it with your name and your driver's license, and you can do the rest in less than 5 minutes. So the key is cacommonsense.org, and that website also contains a lot of information about our party, about its who's supporting it. So we're very transparent about our principles and what we intend to do when we create the party for the rest of us, when we have enough to help create an independent fulcrum within the California legislature.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, Tom, thanks for taking the time to kind of talk to us about party politics here in California and how we can kind of change things. And best of luck to you and the Common Sense Party.
Thanks very much for having me on, Jared. Good luck to you.
Hopefully you get recognized soon.
I hope so. And thanks for your time.
Right. Thanks.
Bye now.